Hello and welcome back to yet another episode with myself, Orla Allen, and today I am joined with the very lovely Jim Reynolds. Hello, Jim.
Good afternoon, Orla.
Good afternoon. So today we're going to start talking about things which are outer worldly or otherworldly, situations where you kind of find yourself experiencing stuff out of the ordinary. So maybe you've moved to a new house and you're feeling energy, or doors are opening and closing. Maybe you've gone to a venue and been aware of a spirit person, or felt like there was a ghostly figure that's come round about you. Whatever the case is, that's what we're going to talk about today. So first off, Jim, would you like to introduce yourself or give us a little bit of background on who Jim Reynolds actually is for the people who don't know you?
Certainly. I'm old enough to have had a career, a job for life. At school, I had ideas where I was needing to go, and it was into the services where I was going to be paying into a pension scheme and enjoying retirement, which I am now doing.
Very good.
Briefly, I had one or two jobs after leaving school, applied for the police service, the fire service, the ambulance service, the prison service. All the replies were you had to be a certain age, 18 or 20, before joining the job. So I eventually got a reply back from the fire service. I got to start there when I was 18. And in them days, you had to retire at the age of 55. I think all things have changed.
Yeah.
I believe now that the service probably still is recruiting a lot of people from a background with the armed forces. If they accept you into the service and you don't have enough time, as in many years, to pay into the pension scheme to qualify for a full pension, they now allow people work beyond 55 a year at a time, subject to a medical. So briefly, I had a job for life, finished at 55 and enjoying leisure time.
Fantastic. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense because being a firefighter is a very physical job, and not everybody maintains their physicality, or they don't, the illness and whatever as you get older, basically becomes more of a kind of concern. So I can understand why 55 would be a kind of good age to start winding down at, essentially. But I suppose if somebody has a background in the armed forces, they're already physically fit, because you need to be for that, which would obviously be an advantage coming into the fire service. I had a friend once try out for it, and when I heard all the different physical activities he had to go through before he was able to kind of go to the next stage, I was just like, no, that's too much for me. I wouldn't have been physically able to do it, So firstly, thank you for your service, as they say in America. I'm sure you had a hand in saving an awful lot of people and helping a lot of people over the years, which is a reflection on who you are as a person, and kind of the fact that you're quite spiritual in yourself, and all the kind of you've been doing it for years, which I think takes a certain type of person, and certainly being a fighter would go hand in hand with that, I think.
Yeah. And the other factor was throughout the service, part and parcel of the conditions of service was you had a medical every so often. Something like every 5 years initially, and then they dropped it to 4 years and 3 years as you progressed towards the age of 55. You highlighted about fitness and whatever. Yes, when I started in 1966,
yeah,
the majority of people I met were very fit, but throughout the 35 years I spent in the job, when I got to 48, 49, 50, and the young chaps were coming in the door, a lot of them were not looking after themselves as keeping themselves very, very fit.
Yeah.
And it became concern, not only in the fire service, but I used to read and hear from friends about policemen and firemen being overweight.
Yeah. You've got to think too, I'm I'm 46, so apparently I'm middle age. That's a bit of a shock to the system in my head. I'm still 25, like, but yeah, I mean, I've just been diagnosed with high blood pressure. Oh, there was a string of things there last year when I went to see the doctor. Do you know? So yeah, I can totally relate to that side of things. But you've also got, I mean, you can't do a job like a police officer or even a paramedic or a fireman and not see some things and have to experience some things and huge trauma and people dying on you and I mean so many other things which has got to take its toll, which in turn could maybe cause you to have physical stuff that you wouldn't have otherwise had because you're maybe eating your feelings or not dealing with the stress and the anxiety of it all too. So I mean it makes sense that the kind of as you go on that you would have more medical tests to make sure you were physically fit to do the job too. Do you know?
Well, which was the case, but unfortunately there was one or two incidents where it had to be mentioned that some members weren't looking after their fitness. They brought in measures to address that. Hopefully things are running fine now.
Yeah. Tell me this, it's a question I've never asked you before, but just when I mentioned, experiencing people dying on you or whatever, did you have many spiritual, because obviously I know you from my circle, so you're a medium and a healer, and I just wondered if you'd ever experienced much while you were on the job where spirit's concerned.
The initial answer is no, but what I did experience, and I'm going back to 30 years ago, I was in a development group and at a place in Edinburgh, and we're sitting doing one-to-one. And this person said to me, I've got a lady come forward here. And then there was a big long pause. And then the person said to me, I'm not getting any evidence about a name or who she is. It was a short reading, and then the person went on to say along the lines that she was thankful about what you had done.
Right.
And then the person said, I'm getting information about the place called Bathgate. Well, I was at that station for quite a while, not at the new station, at the old station, which is along the end of the town. The person said, I'm getting a message about she appreciated all that was happening and all that was tried. And that was, I'd be about 25, 26 or whatever.
Yeah.
And started recalling what was in the reading, what was in the message and whatever. And it was about a woman was living on her own, come home, was sitting watching the television, left the television on, went up the stairs and just fell on top of her bed. And in the interim, the television went on fire.
Oh no.
And spread to the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Once we got her outside and tried to revive her, it didn't happen.
Oh.
And I found that,
yeah.
What's in this? People telling me about things like that, which obviously sparked an interest for me to wonder why things like that happened and how do you go about finding out?
Yeah. I think that's really nice of spirit to do for you though, Jim. If you're saving people's lives and saving their homes and, doing that full time, to have spirit come back and let you know that it's okay when you weren't able to save somebody, I think that's actually quite beautiful. It's quite moving. Because it must be really hard when you don't manage to save somebody. And certainly I don't think, as much as I would love to help people and save people and all the rest of it, I think losing people would be too much for me. I don't think I would be able to cope with that, because I'd find myself asking what else could I have done, and it's natural. You're not going to save everybody, like you can't expect to.
Of course. But the thing that I remember since then, and there was just something else before I joined the service that it was hard to explain at the time.
Yeah.
But it was, I always had this feeling about there was a life thereafter.
Yeah.
That development group circle class and that come away. I mean, that just made me think, well, there's no doubt that is the case.
So can I ask you, Jim, what made you go to that circle in the first place? Did something happen or something spark your interest?
Yes, it was. I'm just sitting here working out when I started having the experience of hearing things, seeing things, and sensing things.
Yeah.
Now the majority of that didn't start happening until I was 26 and older.
Right, okay.
When I joined the service at 8, I was still living with my folks, 18, and I can definitely know that other things didn't start happening until I was married.
Yeah.
Which was when I was 26, and then when we started going on holiday and going to hotels and things like that, that's when all the interesting stuff started to materialise.
That's when the good stuff started to happen.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say was your first spiritual experience then? Like, what was the first moment that you thought, this is something else? Can you remember? Like, I mean, I know for me when, I mean, I've been talking to spirits since I was a child, but it was only kind of maybe about 10 years ago that I realised what I was doing as a child was talking to spirit. So I've got one kind of moment with my granddad, which is what I class as my first moment, but really, like, I think we all talk to spirit from when we're children. We just, don't realise that that's what we're doing at the time. But what would you say was your kind of moment of awakening or your moment of realisation that as an adult that you were speaking to spirit?
I can go back to memories when I was at primary school, and it was between the last few years at primary school before going on to secondary school.
Yeah.
I was wandering about thinking, why do I imagine and what's going on in my head? Because I started feeling I was hearing voices in my head.
Right, okay.
And I'm thinking, when did I first start speaking about it? Not until now. Because at the time, when it was all happening, I said to myself, if I go home and start making comments like this, I know what's going to happen. There's going to be a hand clipped across the back of my ear, and there's comments saying, don't be so stupid, just get on with your school lessons. So the things that I'm starting to recall now, I lived in a little village on the outskirts of Edinburgh, and the local church wasn't even a 5-6 minute walk away from the primary school. And they had a thing that once a month, certain classes would be marched up to the church.
Yeah.
For some sort of service, whether it be Easter or round about harvest time, or so that was happening.
Yeah.
And I remember going in and sitting in this church and looking up at this man with his fancy collar and garb on, and that's when I remember the voices started in my head. And the voice that I heard in my head at that time was, that man's not telling you the truth. and just to repeat what I said a little while ago, this was happening, and I says to myself, if I go home and mention this, I know what's going to happen.
Aye.
And just to go on from there, I started thinking, is this happening because someone is marching me and the rest of the class from the school up to the church to have this service, and it's happening? No, it was happening at other times as well. Then, when I started secondary school, I spent a lot of time getting the bus into Edinburgh to George IV Bridge Library.
Yeah.
And asking for certain types of books to read about religion.
Do you know, that's really interesting, Jim, because in one of the previous podcasts we spoke to Dave about religion, and what I discovered, which I wasn't expecting to, was the fact that it was religion that essentially brought Dave into spiritualism. And it kind of sounds like you've had a similar sort of experience where, you know, it's the trips to church that kind of brought you to mediumship.
That's caused me to go down the road, and
Yeah.
I could say, yes, I could say snap, but this conversation that we are having, I've known Dave for years, and I've never had this conversation with Dave.
Isn't it gas? Do you know something else, Jim? Being a firefighter, and obviously I know you from the circle, so I know a wee bit about you. The reason that I wanted to speak to yourself and Dave first was because you're both men, and because, you know, it's not very stereotypical for men to be involved in spiritualism. Like, you don't get an awful lot of male mediums. You do get them, there's plenty of them, and I highly respect all of you, do you know? But you tend to get, women are more in touch with their emotions and all this sort of stuff, so you tend to get more women sitting in the audience. You tend to get more female mediums. So I think it's interesting, and like I say, the reason that I asked for yourself and Dave first and foremost was because I think there will be men out there, because I've read for men too, where they just haven't been given the opportunity to experience it. And it, like you saying, going home and thinking you're going to get a clip about the ear because you start talking that you are saying you're hearing voices, do you know? It's not something that's perceived as being acceptable for men to do you know? There's another gentleman in circle as well, and I know from his experience that him and his mum had never spoken about it till near the end. His mum was actually sitting in a circle and she hadn't told anybody about it, you know. So you know, it kind of, it's interesting to know that even though, you know, you're not encouraged to move into spiritualism, Spirit have a way of finding you and have a way of drawing you into it. So I think what I'm trying to say is, if there's anybody out there listening who, male or female, and they just don't feel like it's been appropriate for them to delve into all this spiritual stuff, please reach out to somebody. You know, you're more than welcome to drop me an email. There's plenty of groups all over social media. There are people out there who are who don't think you're crazy, who aren't going to give you a clip around the ear, as Jim says. Do you know? So make sure you speak to somebody, or make sure you reach out to somebody. But I think that's just a very fascinating take on it, Jim. And I think too that kind of leads in a wee bit to what we're going to talk about. You know, like if somebody goes into a venue, whether it's their own home or whether it's somewhere they work or somewhere they're visiting, and they're aware of spirit, it can be very daunting for somebody who isn't in the movement to actually speak to somebody about it. Do you know, to say to them, right, I'm feeling this, and not to feel crazy. So can you tell me a little bit more about the venues? You said that you started going to visit places after you were married with your wife.
I can start speaking about that. But the other thing that just sticks in the back of my mind, going to George IV Bridge Library, because obviously there was no internet and whatever. When I was 19, 20, 21. The other thing that stuck in the back of my mind about the church thing, I used to come home and sit. And another comment I'm going to make, which I've never made when I was working. Besides getting books, I used to sit down and have a conversation with myself. Or probably having a conversation with the voices in my head about religion. Just before I move on, I'm going back to the days where I needed a lot of answers, because when I realised what different churches were about, I can remember when I first started primary school, and it still sticks in my mind, that when I went out to our back garden and looked along where all the prefabs were,
Yeah.
there wasn't a piece of washing on any line at all. And when I cast my mind back, and I said to myself, why does this happen? It was about people of the church. It was bringing people up in whatever religion to believe that you shouldn't do anything on a Sunday.
That's very
And I
true.
thought, right, when I started to get into secondary school and think about comments I was thinking about and had conversations with myself about the church preaching that Sunday was the day of God and you shouldn't be doing this, that, and the next thing, and I'd be saying to myself, but wait a minute, I'm going to be looking for a job where I need to be working on a Sunday, and what are they going to say about that?
Exactly. Because the world just stops for one day. When you started to go on wee trips with your wife and you started to experience spirit, do you want to tell us a wee bit about that?
I happened to speak to someone when I was on holiday, and it come out in conversation that if you're looking to educate yourself and find out more, you're needing to contact a spiritualist church. And I sat there biting my tongue saying to myself, do I really need to be contacting a church after all what I thought about that church when I went to primary school? That's when I started thinking, well, what are these spiritualist churches about? And I happened to speak to someone when I was on holiday, and it come out in conversation that they were a member of a spiritualist church. And I said, but, I'd love to get involved, but I work shifts and I couldn't commit to every Sunday of every month.
Yeah.
And luckily, I was speaking to the right person at the right time, said, there's another place you could try.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to turn up every Sunday of every month. And they said, it's a place in Edinburgh near Melville Street.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, okay, right, I'll make some investigation about that. So that got me to the doorstep of a place that I started in a development circle.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's where I first met Dave Grieger.
Yeah.
And we've obviously kept in touch with him up until now. The other things that was happening after I got married at 26, and I used to joke to people saying, when I was 18 and up until 26, I had plenty of money to spend. It's all changed now. What I'm referring to is when you get involved in taking out a mortgage in the mid-60s and especially into the 70s, when I hear people moaning and groaning about the mortgage rate going to 5, 6 or 7.5%.
Yeah.
My wife and I can remember when it went to 15.5%.
Wow.
And I was working 12-hour shifts and had to go out looking for another part-time job, or we would have been throwing the keys through the letterbox.
That's crazy.
Whoever at the time had the loan.
The mortgage broker.
So I joke about them days as well. So to get back to the days that we didn't have expensive holidays, but we're trying to catch up now, we had a caravan. We went camping, and then in between times when either Janice's folks and my folks would watch our two daughters and whatever, managed to do a hotel that was doing a decent deal out with June, July and August. So that's when things really started happening and really became very interesting into what I was experiencing. I ended up being in a development group where they realised I was a shift worker and couldn't commit to every Thursday evening. So that's where the interest in all things that we're speaking about, when it happened and how it happened, and compare things that have been going on in my development towards mediumship. Now, I'm sitting here thinking how to put this example to you. Right, for example, when we're doing our meditation in our group, in our circle, and we do a meditation before we decide to make a spirit link, when we're doing one-to-one work and
Yeah.
whatever. So we do the meditation, and then we think about our intentions,
Yeah.
make things clear before we make the link to spirit,
Yeah.
and go on and receive information for the sitter and a message. When I think back about the connection that I've made with spirit, these energies and whatever, in these old type of buildings, the old hotels, the old castles, the old property that I've visited in the past,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it all happened out the blue.
Yeah. It happened naturally.
Yeah. I didn't sit down and say I'm going to meditate for a while, and then I'm going to try and do this, and I'm going to try and do that. It just happened, and it happened with sensing things, and then seeing things.
Yeah.
Then the other noises come along with the sensing and the seeing in other places that I went to. And just one example, and it's happened several times that I've woken up, I know, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning in a very old building that used to be a private house, and it was bought over, and now they're running it as a business, a hotel. And I woke up and I saw this person walk across the room.
Yeah.
And
By person, you mean spirit?
Yes, a person in spirit, and through the wall.
Can I just ask you how that made you feel, Jim?
Made me feel good, because I was interested in all that sort of thing, and I used to wonder about, previous to these things happening.
Yeah.
I used to walk about after I've had a conversation with someone else that they've experienced a similar thing. I used to walk about thinking, I wish to hang that sort of thing would happen to me. and when I've spoken about it briefly to other people, I would never sit down and say to somebody, listen, I'm going to tell you this story, and you can believe it or believe it not. I'll wait until someone who knows I have an interest in this will breach a conversation, and then I'll talk about it.
Can I just add in a little interesting fact there for you, Jim? Now, you mentioned just a few moments ago how in Circle we have this ritual. So just to explain to everybody, it's ground, attune, protect, permission. I learnt it through spiritual healing. So you ground yourself, you add your protection. No, sorry, you ground yourself, you attune to spirit, you add your protection, and you have permission for it. Yes, we have like a structure when we're doing it in Circle, but when you're out in the big bad world and these things happen to you before you even know about all the ins and outs of it, you already set your intention when you heard people talking about having experiences, and you told the universe, whether you were sitting in meditation to do it or not, you told the universe you wanted to hear this, you wanted to experience this, and that's you setting your intention. So although you didn't knowingly do it, technically you did. And I think that's an interesting fact for anybody that's maybe listening who's having experiences out there at the moment. You know, you will have at some point shown some sort of interest in the spiritual stuff, or so it could be you watched something on the telly and gone, I'd love to experience that, and forgotten about it, or perhaps it's a loved one from spirit who's coming forward and you've maybe wanted to know that they're okay when they're in spirit, and you've just sent up that wee thought. So yeah, it's just when you said that we don't do that when it happens naturally, but in actual fact we do, we just don't realise we're doing it, if that makes sense to you, Jim.
It obviously does now, but I'm pleased that you've explained it that way, because previously I had no knowledge about what we covered when I started a development group in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And met Dave and met the rest of them in the class, and started to have conversations about doing what you've just highlighted a moment ago, about being sensible about it. You got to protect yourself.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I didn't learn that through mediumship. I learned that through spiritual healing. And I loved it so much. I've brought it into my mediumship. And I think the thing too is that, there's no hard and fast rule for this. We don't have a playbook that we can just reference all the stuff that we need to do. So every time you work with a different a spiritual advisor, if you want to call them that, they've got their own experiences, and that's what they're going to bring to the table. And like I say, if I hadn't have studied spiritual healing, I wouldn't have had that quick GAPP. So instantly I can kind of reel that off, and I know exactly where I'm at. But like I say, it didn't come from mediumship. It came from spiritual healing, which we learn our experiences and we bring them to the table wherever we are. Do you know? But yeah, so you saw this man walk across the room, this spirit man.
Oh yeah, to get back to that story, that experience.
Yeah.
So naturally, I get up in the morning before breakfast, make a pot of tea, we'll have a cup of tea, having been addicted to tea with being in the job I was in. And I was saying to my wife,
yeah,
I says, that was an interesting night I had last night, and I wasn't dreaming. And I spun the story, and she says, don't be stupid, just forget about it, it's your imagination. So we were there with a group of friends. It was round about the end of October, December, when we'd start doing Christmas dances with a group of previous neighbours at the last house we were at 30 years ago. So one of them in the company knew what I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
Janice's friend at breakfast jokingly said to me, are you enjoying staying here, or have you had some sleepless nights? And she laughed and I laughed, and everybody knew what she was going to go on about. And I says, I'll tell you a story later, Jane. We were there for 3 nights. This was the first night. So I told Janice's friend the story, and I said, I saw this person, and I saw them just as I'm looking at you, and I described down to a T what they were wearing from head to foot.
It was a full manifestation you seen.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And Janice's friend took all that in. In the morning after breakfast, we said, right, we'll go and pack, get ready. We'll all meet down in the lounge, pay our bills and whatever, and then we'll go. So Janice's friend got herself organised, went down the stair and went to the manageress to have a chat. And she said, well, one of our group has had a very interesting night 2 nights ago. And he told me that he'd seen this person walk across the room, and the person was dressed like this.
Yeah.
And she rhymed it all off. And the manageress said, oh, really? Not again. And she said, that's the son of the owner, who was a wealthy man in London, come up to this place in the Borders and had this house built. Now it's being run as a hotel, but who your friend in your group saw was the son of the man who owned the property initially.
Very good.
So I thought that was nice that I'd spilled all that off, and people would say, oh, it'd be that red wine he was drinking last night, whatever. But it was nice to have some conclusive evidence.
Very much so.
You know, from a woman behind the counter that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what's caused my interest in the other interest, which I'm developing.
Yeah, that's pretty much why we're here to chat today. Do you know that you know about this kind of going to a place and experiencing more? I mean, what we do in Circle, we sit around and we connect in with individual people and we bring forward their loved ones, and that's a very safe kind of space to work in as a medium. But what you're talking about is actually going into somewhere unknown and seeing what you're picking up and seeing. Well, you hadn't. Well, I don't know if you didn't actually intentionally asked for something that particular night, but you hadn't set yourself up for it, and then you know Spirit provided it. And I think for a lot of people that Spirit know what's in your heart. They know what you want. They know what you're able to stand. And I think it's maybe a good point to say at this this particular juncture to, if you don't want spirit to come forward, if you don't want them in your house, if you don't want to experience all this stuff, then you do just need to sit down and have a wee conversation with spirit and say, look, I don't want to know about this. I don't want to see it. I don't want it in my house. And if it if it continues, if it's a case of you're being called to mediumship, then they will stop. If it's something more than that, then there are places and people you can speak to either have your house cleared or to find out what it is that's going on. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes.
Just one other thing that comes to my mind, and if you've got time to allow me to speak about it,
go for it, Jim.
It doesn't involve paying to go to a hotel to experience what I've just spoken about.
Yeah.
When I was working shifts, and I've been retired 20 years now, when I was working shifts, I'd come off the last night shift and have a few hours sleep, set an alarm clock, and I thought, I'll get up at midday, kids are still here, I'll see more of them. When I was doing that, on that particular day after the night shift, I used to walk down from where we're staying now to the newsagents to get a paper. So what I'm coming to, walking down the road, and there was a park, and there was iron railings and a couple of gates, and there was a little plaque on the wall with an arrow saying, "Site of Carmelite Friary."
Right.
And I used to walk past this and just look at the plaque. And one day I walked past it and looked at the plaque. A thought come to my head, which was about, well, that would be an interesting place to go and have a closer look. So I just ignored it. And another week, another month, I was doing the same thing, set off the paper, walking past this plaque. And I don't know what caused the feeling. Maybe you could throw some light on it.
Yeah.
I don't know what caused this feeling, but I just all of a sudden had this feeling I was needing to go in and look around in there.
Yeah.
And the feeling was that strong. I started to slow down and say to myself, is this still going on in my head? I just ignored that and went down, got the paper, and then another week, another month, I was walking past the gate and I started to get the same feeling.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, I'm going to do a detour. Forget the paper. So I walked in through the wooded area, and there was a big opening where the Carmelite Friary used to be.
Right.
And to make it more interesting, the local council had laid out slabs, 2x2, 4x4 slabs, in the area where the friary was.
Right.
And they laid out slabs in another area, and I thought, what was this all about? And I spoke to one of the neighbours about it later on, and they said, there used to be a board up telling you about the history of this friary. I went down to the local library, requested a history book about Carmelite Friary. They said, no, don't have one of them. We only do books on history up to the end of the Second World War. But the helpful lady said, here's an address and here's a phone number. Phone and ask before you go. And it was another place way up the other side of Bathgate. It was like a research library. You could go there, but the books were that old. You couldn't borrow them. So I got on the phone, explained what I was wanting to research, and she said, right, come in, you can sit in the library, read all day, but you can't take the books home. Yeah. So I done that about an interest in this friary. And the Carmelite Friary has been there since 1401 until the late 1560s.
Wow. So
one day on my day off after night shift or whatever, I thought, I'm going to go in there, and there's a bench seat, and I'm going to sit in that bench seat and just sit and wait and see if anything comes to mind.
Yeah.
And I went in there, sat down, and I was just looking out where all the slabs had laid out, and things started to show up in my mind.
Yeah.
Where specific places were.
Yeah.
I thought, this is interesting. So I got up and was walking about and looked to the left and looked to the right. In my mind's eye, I could see where the altar was and where they were preaching and where they were sitting. And the other crazy thing that was happening as well, I thought, what on earth is that? I can smell. And it was a lot of cooking.
Right, okay.
As if someone was cooking.
Yeah.
And what I could see was a building with an old-fashioned kitchen.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, good grief, what's going on here? And then I looked to the left, and there was an area marked out where there was smaller units, smaller buildings. And I had a walk along there and looked about, and I thought, this can't be my imagination, but maybe it is. And when I was looking about, I saw a feature of a building, and inside the building, there was a wooden table and wooden chairs.
Yeah.
And there was people sitting around this wooden table and wooden chairs. So I thought, I don't know what's going on here in my head. I thought, maybe it is something to do with my imagination. So I forgot about going for a newspaper. I went right home and wrote it all down on a paper.
Yeah.
And thought, what am I going to do with this information? And I just threw it in a drawer and forgot about it for about 8 or 10 months.
Yeah.
I was raking about in the drawer, found all these notes, and I thought, I'm going to make an effort to do something about it. And that's when I went down to the local library, and they told me the story about, I've only got books up until the end of second one, blah, blah. Phone this number, which was this other research library.
Yeah, and then you found out that everything you saw was actually what had been there.
Yeah, and when I went along and opened these books, what I was reading in the book was what I'd noted on this sheet of paper.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
It was all good stuff to me. Another thing that I got interested in, and I went back to this area, the Friary place, a while back. I'd done a workshop, I'd done a 2-day workshop. They were dishing out a certificate as well, to work with pendulums.
Yeah.
And divining rods. So I said to myself, after I'd done that workshop, I thought, I'm going to take my pendulum and my divining rods and go back to this site and see if I can get any more information.
Yeah.
So I went back there early morning, and I sat on this bench. I said, what on earth am I going to ask? And I'm sitting here with the 2 divining rods in my hand, and I'm saying in a quiet voice, did the Carmelite Friars have a burial ground here? And right away the rods just crossed. Well, you know the routine first. You've got to say to yourself, show me a yes, show me a no.
Yeah.
Which we've done in the workshop. Ask if you're fit enough to start this work. So they crossed, and I thought, oh my God. So I put one rod behind my back.
Yeah.
I sent out another message. I said, let the rod point in the direction of the cemetery, and it swung away round to the right.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my heavens. So I got the other rod from behind my back, and I pointed them in that direction to myself, and I said out loud, I'm now looking for a gravesite. And I started walking in a straight line, and then all of a sudden, these rods started to close and close and close, and then they crossed each other.
Very good. That's fantastic.
The other odd thing is that there's no reference or indication that there was a burial ground there, but it doesn't mean to say that way back into the 1530s, 1560s, that there may have been one there, but now it's been all overgrown, and the rest of the area, there's been houses built.
Yeah, I suppose if you go back far enough, there's not really records and stuff, so they're kind of only using the information that they know, if you know what I mean. Do you think when you sat on the bench, Jim, that was like when you do your meditation in circle? So you took a moment to quieten your mind and set your intention of what it was that you wanted to do, and then you started asking your questions?
With the experience of the workshops I've done, previous workshops, previous development groups, our development group and circle, when I think back what we've done there, then my question's got to be, yes, I may have been doing that, but had no intentions of what I was doing, if you can understand.
Yeah. You weren't aware of what you were doing, but you did it naturally.
I wasn't aware at that moment in time that I was stilling my senses to allow the information that I was looking for and hoping to get.
Yeah. It's fascinating the way you naturally do stuff and you naturally communicate. I think that's because we've been doing it since we were small, do you know? When you're a child, everything's a reflex until you learn differently, do you know, or you lose the reflexes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, especially with communicating with spirit, we just do it naturally without thinking about it. So maybe it's a throwback from your childhood, do you know?
Hopefully. So the other thing that comes to my mind, through meeting Dave, when I say just recently, well, it would be middle of last year, probably on one of our fishing trips or whatever, come out in conversation about explaining to Dave that I was starting to get back into the interest of going to old buildings, sensing energy, and try and pick up some information, sense some evidence of what's going on. And Dave said, "Oh, there's plenty on the websites saying that they're doing that sort of stuff." He says, "I'll send you an email about the sites." I said, "Thanks very much." And he did.
Yeah.
When I went onto the sites, it was different groups from different parts of the country advertising vigils at some castles, some jail somewhere else, and other buildings.
Yeah.
But what they were doing, it was a couple of mediums charging whatever price, and it was quite expensive. It was running into 40, 50, 60 pound a visit to do a vigil. My thing is, I want to do the investigation side of it and participate in the investigation side of it rather than be invited along
to somebody else doing it.
Yeah, somebody else doing a vigil. Now, the back end of last year, after that conversation with Dave and Dave sending me the information, I got into a conversation with another person about developments and circles, and I happened to say to them, I'm looking for a workshop that is taking you through the process of how do you go about an investigation.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, you're speaking to the right person. I know of a chap who's rented a place in a street, off the High Street in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And he's doing a workshop entitled Life of a Ghost Hunter." Now, that was the back end last year. I think it might have been the first week in December. So he gave me all the address information. So I got the train in, went to the place to hear that it had been cancelled.
Oh, no.
I don't do Facebook or any other stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or I might have known about it, and I thought, oh dear. And I asked the folk at the premises, is it cancelled or is it rescheduled? And they said to me, you'll need to wait till the turn of the year until they publish the newsletter about all the stuff that goes on, all the workshops and lectures and whatever that goes on here.
Yeah.
And get back to us. So that's where I am at the moment, needing to go and do his workshop and learn more about organising such things.
Yeah. So, Jim, it's been really interesting chatting with you. I've really appreciated it. But just as a final finishing note, what advice would you give anybody out there who's maybe listening and they've maybe experienced something in their house or their home or their work, and they maybe don't have anybody that they can talk about it to? What advice would you give them, or what would you say should be their next step forward?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is for them not to write it off as their imagination.
Yeah.
And hopefully that would spark their interest to take it a step further. And then speak to people that know about these things for a chat and some advice. My advice would be your websites to invite people getting in touch for a chat and an advice about
where to go next.
The things that they're experiencing, which in my mind, my experience is not my imagination. And I've enjoyed into that doing some investigation at libraries to find out how much information I gleaned when I had that experience.
Yeah. Well, certainly, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You'll get me on email at orla@orlaallen.com. Also, myself and Jim are in a circle which is online, so no matter where you are in the world, if you have WhatsApp or Zoom, we can keep in touch and you can join this circle. Again, it's the same email address, orla@orlaallen.com. But if you're looking for a physical circle and you're in the vicinity of the Edinburgh area, there's always the College of Parapsychology in Melville Street, and I will attach their website to description in this podcast. But if you can't find it, you can find them on Facebook or you can go directly to their website. So that's the College of Parapsychology in Edinburgh, and they've been going since I think it's 1932. So they're not a new venue. They've been around. They've served their time. God, they must be coming close to nearly 100 years now at this stage because we're 2026. That'll be a massive celebration. So yeah, if you're looking for more advice for a physical circle or for something in your house, if you're looking for a clearing or whatever, they've got information on the site. And they also offer a lot of workshops and healing and all sorts of stuff that way too. And I'm sure they don't mind me giving them a wee plug. So yeah, I would highly recommend that. I've also got experience on the west coast of Scotland, and obviously from my accent I'm Irish. So if you're in either of those places and you want more information, then just reach out, drop me an email, and I'm sure I can find you. I also have people actually down in England as well. So reach out. I know people all over the world, and we can hopefully get you sorted or point you in the right direction to get you started. So, Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, all the best for the future. I hope you find this this journey that you're looking for into the unknown, into discovering new and weird and wonderful things that are out in the beautiful spirit realm.
Yes, it's still in my interest. And I'm going to sign off by saying thank you very much for inviting me to do your podcast. And I hope inspired some new members to get in touch and have an interest in what we've just discussed.
Thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure. And yes, I hope for at the very least there's a couple of men that are listening that realise that it's, anybody can make that connection. Anybody can be part of this world, the world being the spiritual world, and that they reach out and find their circle wherever it may be. And don't forget, if the first circle you find doesn't fit with you, it's okay. There's loads more circles out there, and I'm sure we can find you someone that'll suit your fit. Have an absolutely fabulous day. Thank you all for listening as always. Thank you again to Jim for joining us. And thank you, of course, to Spirit for always being with us. Have a blessed day and all the blessings that life can hold. Namaste.